Um, and we've got a lot going on today, so thank you, Avery, for starting the recording. And I think we will go ahead and get started. So my name is Casey Beck. I am the Behavioral Health Program Manager here at the CJC. And this webinar is going to be recorded and available on our website. It's focused on the new application for Oregon's Behavioral Health Deflection Program, specifically Phase 1, which is the county application for the first 25% of funding. And I'll go through those details. We will go kind of give like an overview of the BHD program, and then some eligibility and application requirements, and then an SM Apply application walkthrough. I will ask that you hold your questions until I pause for them, just as a matter of time. But I do have some colleagues monitoring the chat too, if it's easier to put them in there. But let's see. So a quick program overview. Hoping to orient you to a definition of deflection and the goals of deflection programs, deflection pathways, and then what the available funding is for this biennium. So deflection programs are defined as collaborative programs between law enforcement agencies and behavioral health entities or community-based social service organizations that assist individuals who may have substance use disorder, another behavioral health disorder, or co-occurring disorders, and who often have other service needs, to create community-based pathways to treatment, recovery support services, housing, case management, or other services. For those of you who attended this week's commission meeting, this will be a little bit of a repeat, but for those who are tuning in for the first time this week, this diagram down here is the sequential intercept model from Samhsa Gaines Center, and it details how individuals with mental health and substance use disorders come into contact with and move through the criminal justice system. And deflection programs really intend to operate in this little green circle on the far left here. So that is primarily intercept 0 and intercept 1. Deflection can be facilitated in a number of ways called pathways. The 6 listed here are nationally recognized and established in the CJC's Oregon Behavioral Health Deflection Program Best Practices Report, which was published by actually earlier this year in April and written by our partners at OHSU PSU School of Public Health. That's available on the CJC's Behavioral Health Deflection webpage on our main website, and is a great read, especially if you were thinking of, I don't know, applying for BHD funding in the near future. Highly recommend tabbing through that. There's also just a great executive summary if you only had time to read a page or two. It would be worth it. In terms of funding, here is the breakdown of the entire biennium funding. So in total, there was $39,999,737 available. You'll see that kind of represented as a bar across the bottom. This past Tuesday, the commission met, and thanks to House Bill 3069, which was from this 2025 legislative session, the commission is now the decision-making and governing body for this grant. The commission met on Tuesday to decide upon a set-aside amount for the use by tribal governments in this biennium, and that totals $2,618,920. And what that means is that out of the total pot, there remains $37,380,817. So now that that tribal portion's been determined, I'm going to walk you through how this remaining funding is broken down. And I think the best analogy to use here is imagine this remaining funding as a whole entire pie, so a whole pie. And this pie is being cut into 3 pieces. So the first slice of pie is funding for phase one, which is why all of you are tuning in today. House Bill 3069 requires that 25% of the remaining BHD funds, so this pie, to be distributed to counties based on the same exact county formula share that we used last time. So during the 23-25 biennium, if you're not a newbie to deflection, you'll remember that that was a percentage formula derived from the county formula share employed by OHA's Oversight and Accountability Council that does the burn calculations. So we're using that exact same formula for this 25% funding, this first slice of pie here, the remaining funding. The second slice of pie will become available down the road, so we're going to store it in the fridge for a while. And House Bill 3069 requires that 70% of the remaining BHD funds be distributed to counties based on a new formula. And that new formula is, a work in progress, I would say. My colleague Will, the senior researcher here for Deflection at the CJC, is going to hopefully be meeting with many of you over the month of August to discuss historical data for your county regarding PCS arrests and cases filed, and work with you to contemplate methodologies for coming up with a BHD participant projection of sorts for this coming biennium. Your participant projections will then work into the new formula that CJC develops, and that new formula will determine how that 70% is split among counties. So I don't have answers for you now as to what exactly that looks like, but I do highly recommend that you and your teams touch base with Will and his team. And I think I'll ask Will to drop his email in the chat here. Really encourage you to meet with them during the month of August. You should have received an email probably like last week or earlier this week regarding your assigned TA week. And those folks, they're really excited to meet with every one of you and discuss what these participant projections might look like and determine what level of assistance they can offer you in coming up with those projections. So that being said, the third and final slice of pie is 5% that will be allocated to evaluation and technical assistance. And what this actually breaks down to, and now we're just kind of focusing in while everything else fades away. Phase one, which is where we're at today, there is $9,345,204 available. And how that breaks down using that same county formula share that we used last time is as follows. So this was approved by the commission on Tuesday and is the 25-27 BHD phase one, so that first slice of pie, county formula allocations. You'll notice that many counties have $150,000. House Bill 3069 actually raised the floor amount to $300,000. And so you'll see here that that 150 is kind of the first chunk that will be distributed to eligible counties that are receiving the floor. The remaining $150,000 would be distributed as part of that phase two that I mentioned. Largely, if not all counties opt in, and any amount of funding remains unallocated as part of phase one, we are going to find a way that those unallocated funds will be made available to participating counties as part of phase two. Again, details yet to be decided, but know that those don't just disappear. They will, go back into either increasing your award amounts here, but maybe at a little bit of a later date. So we want to get this first chunk of funding out as soon as possible. So in terms of the 25-27 phase one solicitation, I want to walk you through process, timeline, important dates, who you should be if you are an eligible applicant, what eligible expenses there are, and the required components of that application. And then I will pause for any questions before we hop into an application walkthrough. So first off, this is kind of a really, bird's eye view of the process and timeline, and is meant to be like a helpful tool, but you'll see there's no like super specific dates listed in the colorful timeline below. And that's just because things are still a little bit in flux. But to generally orient you to this business, phase one, right now, the solicitation released on July 30th. It is currently open to all Oregon counties, and you are attending the webinar today. So you are right on schedule. Applications are due at the end of this month because it's August 1st today, which is incredible that the summer has flown by. But that means we have about 30 more days to get your applications together and submitted to the CJC. They're due at 11:59 p.m. on August 31st. And August 31st is a Sunday, but we figured why make the deadline that Friday in case we have some weekend warriors that really want to put in some effort. Award decisions will then be made at the commission meeting on September 16th. Our goal is to send out contracts and begin that contracting process in early October. And really, that's an effort to minimize any gaps between your current project period, which is, going to end on September 30th, and you have funding until that date, and then the new project period, with funding that you can backdate a little bit. I believe, if I'm thinking correctly, it's to July 1st of this year through August 31st of 2027. And the goal there is to have a tiny bit of overlap so that there's no gaps in funding for your programs and you can continue operating at your current service level. For phase two efforts, as I mentioned earlier, CJC provided historical data to all Oregon counties who expressed interest in BHD. We are currently scheduling projections TA meetings with everyone throughout the month of August. We'll send out emails to folks. Please do schedule that if you haven't already. And then those participant population projections that I talked about earlier are due to the CJC on September 19th. Our goal then is to open that phase two solicitation after the October commission meeting with award decisions in December. All right, so again, just a zoom out of what were the important dates there. July 30th, the solicitation was released. That's the first gold date on the left. Today's webinar, the blue date in the middle, August 1st. You'll see that you have the whole month of August to get that application in, with the next gold date being August 31st in the middle bottom there. And then lastly, the commission makes its final award decisions for phase one on that September 16th date, with the goal to begin contracting in October. As far as eligible applicants go, those are county governments or their designee, and Oregon's federally recognized tribal governments or their designee. That's who is eligible for BHD overall. Again, the phase one is open to county governments. Only one application may be submitted per entity, and I have a couple of notes I wanted to share regarding consortia applications. So multi-jurisdictional application on behalf of a consortium of government partners is completely acceptable. However, one designee must serve as the main applicant for the purpose of administering the grant agreement and managing sub-agreements. That doesn't necessarily mean that only that applicant will be filling out an application. You'll see through our application walkthrough a little bit later, there are some details we'll still need from you if you're joining a consortium and you're not the designee. But as part of a consortium, there will be one main player that's going to be contracting with the CJC and managing any other sub-agreements with your county, for instance. Any counties interested in designating a tribe to lead their consortium, I ask that you reach out to me directly. In fact, Avery or Will, if you're on this call, do you mind putting my email in the chat as well? But yeah, I ask that you reach out directly to me. We would love to touch base with you because want to make sure all of your ducks are in a row, and understanding that the tribal process will not begin until 2026. So just wanted to call that out in case your county was going to designate a tribe as the designee for your consortium. For your BHD program, in order to be eligible for this funding, a program must be coordinated by or in consultation with a CMHP, a local mental health authority, or a federally recognized tribal government. They must have a coordinator with the following program duties: so convening partners as needed, managing grant program funds, tracking and reporting data as required by the CJC, and your program must involve at least the following partners: a district attorney, a law enforcement agency, a CMHP, and a provider from a burn network. As far as eligible expenses go, there were a couple small additions and changes as part of House Bill 3069 from this last session, and you'll see those kind of added in the latter half here. The first ones you're probably familiar with. So grant funds may be used for deflection program expenses such as law enforcement employees, deputy district attorneys, and behavioral health, case management or outreach workers, including peer navigators and mobile crisis and support services workers. They can be used for behavioral health workforce development, capital construction of behavioral health treatment infrastructure. And then new to eligible expenses are the payment of restitution to a victim if potential or outstanding restitution is a barrier to program participation. Purchase of a closed-loop referral technology to facilitate referrals to local partners and community-based organizations involved in supporting deflection and jail reentry programs. And then just a reminder that no more than 10% of program funds may be requested for administrative costs. As far as the required application components, prior to submission, of course, we ask that you coordinate with all the partners of the development and administration of your program. Hopefully no one's receiving notice that they're going to be part of an application for a BHD program at the last minute. These are, as defined, really collaborative programs between law enforcement agencies, behavioral health service providers, and that collaboration really is from start to end and then some. But as part of the application components for submission, we require responses to all application questions and a budget projection sheet completed and submitted to SM Apply, which I'll detail later. This is available for download on the CJC's BHD webpage, and it's also available for download when you're in the grant management portal, going to the budget projection sheet, which I'll demonstrate later. A quick note, budget projection sheets must be submitted using the original formatting and formulas provided to the applicant by the CJC, or it will not be accepted. This is kind of a new policy on our end, just to really hopefully discourage any tampering with formulas or editing behind the scenes, just so that we have the most clear picture and that everyone's on the same page for what your program needs to be successful. So I will pause here before going into the application walkthrough to see if there are any questions. 10:21 right now, and I want to be mindful of time to make sure that we get a good walkthrough here. But so I'll try to keep us on task if there are a lot of questions, but I'm opening it up. What do you guys got for me?
Casey, did you mention that you were going to go in more detail through the budget template, or is that not on the agenda?
Thank you for that question, Natalie. I was actually not planning on going into too many details about the budget. I have a screenshot of the budget sheet and kind of a general beginning information. But if you have specific questions about the budget, maybe we can save those to the end, or alternatively, we can connect offline and I can walk you through that.
Yeah, great. And I actually I don't have specific questions. It's more of a general question about the expectation around what should be included. So it is our projection for the full biennium of the total amount that we anticipate needing to operate our program, right? So there isn't necessarily a breakdown for just phase one funds or phase one and phase two. It's the total for the 2-year period. Is that correct?
Um, yes. Hold on. I am just wanting to touch base with Avery real quick.
Yeah,
That is
I
the
can jump
case.
in, Casey.
Thank you.
So, yeah, at this point, so we had this question in the chat as well, so I'm glad you brought it up. So the project period is July 1, 2025 through August 31st, 2027 for all funds. However, at this time, because all that we will be able to award as part of phase one is you will submit a budget request using the phase one funding table that is on our BHD webpage. So at this time, we are only asking you to account for phase one funds. As part of phase two, then we'll look at the whole picture. But that is getting ahead of where we're at right now.
Okay,
Thanks
so
for the
just
clarification, Avery.
I'm sorry, Casey, I didn't mean, so I just want to make sure that I understand. We take the number that it represents our total allocation by that first formula for the percentage that's allocated by that formula, and then we budget accordingly and submit that, and that's due to you as part of this application.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Let's see. Other ones in the chat I'm seeing. Where do I find the budget form that's available on the CJC's Behavioral Health Deflection Grant Program webpage, as well as in the grant management portal at a link that I will show you shortly. And then Christine Atkinson, I see. Oh, thank you, Avery, for posting that link in the chat. I see that you're flagging the training handout does not work, page not found. So that's a great flag for us. Thank you. Do you mind specifying if you were navigating to that via the solicitation or from our webpage?
I tried it both ways, Casey.
Okay.
I tried it from the link that you provided on the email, and then I went to the web page because I thought maybe it would work better there, and neither one went.
Okay, wow, that's fascinating. Well, thank you for flagging that for us. I made sure to test all links before going out, but maybe we need to talk about some browser compatibility. So thank you for that flag, and we will absolutely look into that. We will obviously touch base on this towards the end of the presentation, but what Christine's mentioning is a new handout that we have that's kind of a best practices for writing grant proposals. And really what that is kind of a PDF version of the training video. So they're not like very unique items that are going to be completely separate, but in case you didn't have time to watch the video and you wanted to just read through the PDF, that's what that's there for. Okay, and Andrea is able to access the links. Okay, and so Christine, at a minimum, we'll just send you the PDF copy so that you have it.
Thank you.
And
maybe it is a browser. Yeah, maybe.
Oh yeah, you know, it happens. All right. Any other questions before I move on to walking you all through the application? Okay, I'm taking that as my window of opportunity to dive in. So, first and foremost, orienting you to that web page that we're mentioning and the one that Avery kindly posted in the chat there. So when you navigate to CJC's website, there's the top menu bar, and you'll see grants, and from grants, behavioral health deflection in alphabetical order happens to be the one right on top for now. So when you get to that, it will bring you to this web page, and here you'll find some handy information such as the funding table that we mentioned, the solicitation, and other such resources. When you click the solicitation, it has multiple components, and then I also wanted to include a snapshot of the budget sheet. But the BHD solicitation itself, just 2 sweet little pages. And then we include a full copy of all application questions in case the way that your team works best is to print all these out and hand them around the office and assign folks to different parts. So that's more of an accessibility thing. Of course, we ask that the application questions be answered in the grant management portal, but they're there for you to review. And that is why when you open that solicitation link, it will be, many pages long, but know that the solicitation itself is just two pages at the very beginning. As part of that solicitation link, we also include a sample grant agreement, which you'll see on the far right here. And that is helpful to many counties, just to kind of get an idea of what we'll be asking as part of that grant agreement, just to meet with your legal teams. The budget sheet is not included in a PDF form of any of that regard in that solicitation link, but it is available on the website and in the portal, as I mentioned. So navigating to the portal. This is SM Apply, SurveyMonkey Apply, and it's the CJC's grant management portal. Many of you are probably very familiar with this software as CJC grantees. If you happen to be new, though, you will need to navigate to this site and click Login, Register, Apply, however you want to get there. And if you have never been here before, it will ask you to create a brand new registration. So when you do that, you'll create your account, it'll let you in, and then you'll see, hey, your email address has not been verified. You'll be asked to send a verification link. And at that point, once you've verified your email, you'll be in like Flynn and everything will be smooth from there. We also wanted to pause here for everyone kind of going into the BHD application for the first time. On the bottom left in this orange box is where you add collaborators. So by clicking this button, a new window will pop up here that says collaborators, and you'll enter in any email address of individuals that you want to be able to view and or edit the application alongside of you. So for instance, if I was going to be adding Avery as a collaborator, I would want to make sure that I toggle on the view and edit button so that she could edit the application directly, and make sure that I include a message that says, hey, this is Casey, I'm sending you this link to collaborate on our BHD program application. This message will arrive, to your colleague from SurveyMonkey Apply directly, so it may go into a junk folder, and just keep an eye out for that. Alternatively, my senior researcher will maybe he needs to be involved as a collaborator, but only as a viewing party, and doesn't need to necessarily be in there accidentally pressing a button, although we would obviously trust Will with all buttons here, being the researcher that he is. But you would select the view only button if that were the case. So after you send an invite, they should receive that. Again, it might go to the junk folder, but once they accept, you would see them as a collaborator. All right, so once you're in here, the first thing that you'll want to tackle is the cover sheet, and you'll access it by clicking that task. If this application is for an individual county, you'll select the first option here at the bottom after selecting your county from the drop-down list. And you'll move on towards filling out the primary and fiscal contact information. We will return to what consortia members do here in a minute, though. But let's pretend that this is an application for an individual county first. So you'll fill out your primary applicant contact. This is the individual that is going to be the primary contact for all application questions that Avery and I have. And you should be someone that is familiar with your program and also familiar with the application itself. Your fiscal contact, listed at the next section here, should include the legal name of the organization receiving payment, the state employer identification number, and an accurate address. Those three components are critical here to get your program set up correctly with the Oregon Department of Administrative Services to receive payment. So make sure that all of those are in order. Throughout this application, you'll see that I use my pets. So if you're wondering who Kava, Zeddy, and Tony are, that's a really cute golden retriever and two adorable and annoying cats. But that's who these folks are, and this is just an example. So of course you'll be filling out your own information. Next up, we're going to have you indicate whether this is the legal organization for payment is a nonprofit. And then whether or not you would like ACH payment processing, which is an automated clearinghouse direct deposit. And then you'll see at the bottom here, there are two options. You can save and continue editing with the button here on the left with the arrow. So that allows you to save, exit, and return to your application later. If we were to click that, it would look a little something like this. The green circle next to cover sheet is half full. So it's in progress. I've entered in some information, but I have not yet marked it as complete. So if I were to, scroll back down on the left here and get to that bottom again and mark as complete and navigate back to that web page that we just saw, that little circle would be full with a check mark saying, hey, it's completely, ready to go, moving on to the next task. But before I get there, I want to loop back to what do you do if you're a member of a consortium? So if this application is for a county that is part of a consortium, you'll select the second option on the cover sheet here and will be directed to more consortia questions. All right. So if this application is part of a consortium, we will ask you then to list all government partners, including counties and tribal governments. And then we have a note here like, hey, if your consortium includes a tribal government, which you're welcome to do, they'll also need to indicate so as part of their process that will occur in 2026. And then has a consortium established your county as a designee to apply for the Oregon Behavioral Health Deflection Program? So I'm selecting no here, saying that, oh, I'm not the designee for my consortium. And that would, that would get me to this drop-down question. Is like, okay, well then who is that designee for the purposes of your program? And then you will need to select the box at the bottom, acknowledging that your jurisdiction's proportion of funds for the 25-27 BHD program will be distributed to the county that you have designated above as the main applicant for your consortium. So if you are not the designee of your consortium, you'll simply indicate so, and then for the two other required tasks, the application questions and budget projection, you'll just need to indicate so again, and you'll save after each step, but then your application is ready to submit. So if you're not the designee of your consortium, that's all you have to fill out is stating who is the designee of your consortium, who you are as your county, and then going through to indicate that you did designate someone else to be the applicant, and then selecting next, marking as complete, but then you will be all done. So the cover sheet there shows a check mark as we marked it as complete. I saw a question pop up earlier from Melody asking, hey, if marked as complete, could edits still be made after? And absolutely. So if you mark something as complete and wish to go back and edit it, you may do so by clicking the task and then navigating to the three dots in the right corner at the top here. Selecting that you can either reset it completely, so basically starting from scratch. You can click edit, which will then edit your answers and allow you to go back in, or you can download that if you needed to send it out for review among your colleagues. Note that if you do reset or edit, it becomes in progress again. So you will still need to mark it as submit. Mark it as complete before you submit. And on the side here, you're seeing this little task bar that we've had 1 of 3 tasks completed. And our goal is to get 3 full check marks before clicking submit. So you've marked your cover sheet as complete, you're making your way through the application, you're likely like saving and exiting and logging back in to edit. That's at least how most people are, accessing this application. The status on that, little bar will change as you complete more things. You can continue to edit or move on by selecting tasks at the left there. All right, so we're navigating now to the application questions, and the first part are the required details about your deflection program coordinator. Next, you'll indicate how your program coordinator is funded, and then acknowledge that that program coordinator is responsible for all the duties listed above and as outlined in House Bill 3069, and that the applicant's required to provide the CJC with any updates if that individual performing those coordinator duties changes in the future. So what that would look like is simply an email to Avery or I saying, hey, the coordinator was Will, but now it's Monica, and here's Monica's email address, phone number, title of her position, etc. So moving on to required program partners and collaboration. So here you're going to indicate all involved organizations. You must select at least one of these first 3 to be eligible to submit an application. So this comes directly from legislation. You must select one of these to be eligible, that your deflection program is coordinated by or in consultation with a CMHP, a local mental health authority, or a federally recognized tribal government. Once you select whichever, it applies to your particular program, we also ask that you name that entity. And then you'll see in B2, you'll provide the agency or organization names for each of the required deflection partners. So that looks like every single one of these filled out. And just a quick note that as part of the required local partners, depending on your jurisdiction, your CMHP and BURN may be the same organization, and that's okay. So you'll see here, Caring Cats Company was the CMHP and the BURN. And even though that's a repeat, that's totally fine. That just happens to be what it is in ZD's jurisdiction. Moving on to the next question, you'll provide the name of each additional and optional entity that your program has partnered with to develop and or administer your county's deflection program. So listing an entity here means that they are actively engaged with your deflection program. Maybe they're providing referrals or active outreach or other services, for instance. So what I'm trying to get across is do not list your local public defender's office if you only had some conversations with a public defender to notify them of the existence of your program. If you were in a partnership with your public defense office and they're going to be helping you seek out referrals, when you've got that process, that workflow documented, that's a partnership, that's involvement, and that's when we would ask you to check the boxes here and select those. So again, if you maybe have a crisis response team, a first responder agency that exists in your community, that's fantastic. Unless they are participating in your deflection program as a referral source or actually, services for your participants that are being paid for, you don't need to list them here. All right, so next, it's just a quick, acknowledgement. Hey, have you actually talked to these people, coordinated with your deflection program? Please select yes. And then we ask you to describe that coordination. This is a very similar question to last year's application. And what we're looking for is a clear and concise explanation. I know how small these word limits are, but there are potentially 36 counties applying for deflection, and only one 2 to 3 hour meeting to review all of those applications and make award decisions. This is formula funding, so our job right now is just to figure out if you're eligible, and we are hoping to make this application submission process as easy as possible on you, and also the review process as easy as possible on our commissioners and our staff. So the word limits, are going to be enforced. We're asking for clear and concise information, definitely quality over quantity. If you're really struggling, feel free to reach out to us and we can maybe help troubleshoot. But for instance, here, we would be looking for who's involved. Is there anyone missing from the table? What steps have you taken to make sure partners and collaborators have a say, et cetera, et cetera. And let's see. Moving on to describing how the program coordinator communicates with all program partners. Again, very, very short, concise would be appreciated. Hey, are these weekly briefs? Are there monthly meetings? Are you sending out a newsletter? Is there an internal dashboard you're using? And then we hop right into deflection program details, describing how your deflection program is culturally and linguistically responsive, trauma-informed, and evidence-based. So be specific here. What action have you taken already, or are you planning to take to address those factors? Similarly, with language barriers, be specific in your response. What language barriers exist in your community? Have you, done the work to figure that out yet? If not, what work needs to be done to figure that out? Is there any language barriers that you anticipate in your programming? Are there participants that, might be experiencing language barriers in order to participate? What action have you taken or are you planning to take to address those barriers? And then in C3 here, if you have previously received funds for BHD, and you have some sort of operating deflection program, we ask that you kindly, list the month and date of when your program became operational. For CAVA's application here, that happens to be September 2024, when PCS became recriminalized. Moving on, we ask that you select all of the nationally recognized deflection referral pathways that your program currently implements or would like to implement from the list below. So again, a selection here indicates that BHD funds currently or in this biennium will support that particular pathway, and referrals from that pathway to your BHD program are or will be tracked. So kind of like that partner question earlier, if there is a crisis response team in your jurisdiction, but they are not actively giving you referrals and you're not tracking those referrals as it relates to your deflection program, you don't need to list that here. What we are looking for are the pathways that you are currently implementing as part of your deflection program and currently tracking, or what you're planning to add this biennium. So all of those are detailed there. For each one you select, you will be asked to describe its current operation from the initial point of contact to a referral and or engagement with treatment or services. And then we'll ask you to indicate, hey, is this indeed currently operational at this time, or is it not yet operating and something that you're looking to add? So next up, to describe your program's participant eligibility criteria, we ask that you select all criteria that apply and then specify anything that needs to be specified. So for Kava's program here, she selected standalone PCS as an eligibility criteria, as well as PCS and other low-level offenses. The low-level offenses that her county is accepting are theft 2, theft 3, and ID theft. So that's where you would list that out. And then for the next part, is there any variation in eligibility criteria between your selected pathways? So if someone is entering, via a law enforcement point of contact, does that look different if you also have a naloxone plus pathway? Like, does a criminal charge, exclusion or eligibility criteria need to be there? Does it look any different among the pathways you're using? That would be great to know and detailed here. For exclusionary criteria, we ask that you select all that apply, and again, specify the offenses or any other specific details. And if there's any variability, you'll indicate so in that following question. It's just barely shown at the bottom there. But here, Cava County said that they will exclude previous deflection involvement, and they have a specific time period in mind. So if deflection involvement happened within the most recent 90 days, that person would be excluded. And they also exclude any pending warrants. So that's where this would be captured. For the next one, select all criteria for a participant to successfully complete deflection in your program. So here we want to know about the criteria for that successful completion and if there's any variability among pathways. So note that not all options are shown here on the slide, but if you're selecting completed assessment as that first checkbox, we ask that you provide relevant details such as like what type of assessments, what measures, metrics, benchmarks, etc. Cava indicates here that she's using the ASAM and then social determinants of health at intake. And then they're also engaged with treatment plan for a specific number of days. And we would ask that you detail any other data sources, measures, benchmarks, etc. The last part of application questions is this data attestation, acknowledging that your program will comply with the CJC's relevant BHD data tracking and reporting requirements, as well as cooperate with the CJC and their technical assistance providers in establishing statewide data collection for deflection programs, etc. This is the red cap bit, like, hey, you're participating in BHD programming, you're going to be submitting data to red cap. We ask that you, participate with those, amazing folks at OHSU with any technical assistance that we ask you to engage in with them. And we marked as complete. So you'll see that second check mark pop up. Application questions are completed. And again, you can click those three dots in the type row to download that sheet, reset it completely, or just edit your responses. Just make sure that you mark it as complete again to get that check mark. And then, so the last component of this application is the budget projection sheet, which is also available on the BHD webpage on the CJC website, but you can download it directly by that first top right arrow that says click here. So it says, please download the budget projection sheet. When you click that, it will automatically download to your computer. So it will look a little something like this, where you'll see a tiny pop-up window in your browser that says budget projection sheet BHD has been downloaded. When you click that, if you're on a PC, for instance, in your file explorer, that's where you'll see this budget projection sheet, and that's how you'll open it. You'll click it, and then you will see our standard CJC budget projection sheet. We recommend you save a copy to your computer, and that way you can upload it very easily to your application. And then in the top left corner there, I've zoomed a tiny bit, there are a few starting questions of, hey, what grant program is this for? You'll select BHD, the name of your who's applying here, that's Cava County, the date, and then is the applicant a tribal government? Cava County is not a tribal government, so she selected no. And then filling out the budget sheet as is. And then as Natalie asked earlier, and Avery was able to clarify, so thank you again for those questions and answers. The project period here is July 1st, 2025 through August 31st, 2027. So just a little bit more than a full biennium to provide a little bit of overlap. And your phase 1 funding, as indicated on the funding table. So for instance, if you were awarded the floor amount for this first phase 1 and you have an award of $150,000, that is the budget that we are asking you to detail in this budget projection sheet. The next phase 2 of funding with the 70% cannot be calculated until those the participant projections are completed by all counties. And the CJC has developed that new formula. We completely acknowledge how, much the unknowns can affect, your anxieties and about this process. We are here to support you in any way that we can. And, we're navigating this for the first time as well. We're humans, behind these computers, and we want to be able there to support you. And we understand with the uncertainty, it's challenging to create a budget when you don't know when the rest of it will be. So to the best of your ability, budget for what you have the formula allocation for phase 1, and reach out to us with any questions. Once you have that budget projection sheet completed, you'll upload it by selecting this button here. You'll then see the name of that sheet, however you saved it, in this box. That means it's successfully been uploaded, and then you'll mark as complete. We have a full and complete application here with 3 check marks and a full 3 of 3 task complete status bar. Personally, I always like to review my applications before really submitting, and so I could do that by clicking the review button here. It'll bring me to this web page, which is a really handy spot to download it if that's of interest to you for saving for your records. It brings it all together in one PDF. And from this page, you can submit it directly, or you can go back to the application. One more time, you'll see, hey, we got those 3 tasks completed, a full status bar. We're ready to submit. It'll double check with you to make sure. You'll click submit or review again if you really need to. And then you'll get this little note on the web page saying, hey, application submitted. And you will also get an email confirmation upon submission of your application. But again, it's coming from a no reply email at SM Apply, the grant management portal. So check your junk folders if you don't see it soon. Note though, if you did get to that webpage and it said application submitted, you're in the clear. The application has been submitted. So as Christine mentioned kind of earlier today, we have some additional resources that we called out in the email to counties, and then also as part of this webinar and other notes on the BHD webpage. So first is the CJC Grant Administration Guide. This is just a great tool to look at all of our grant administration policies, restrictions, eligible expenses, prohibited costs, etc. But we have 2 new applicant resources that might be of use to you. The first is a new training video on how to write effective grant proposals. We contracted a great training group called Catalyst and worked with them over the last couple of months to really provide you all with guidance on how to write those clear, concise, succinct responses in determining those word limits. So what the CJC is looking for in a great application response. Like I mentioned earlier, that PDF handout is the same exact thing, just in a different format. So for accessibility reasons, if the training video is not your thing or you don't have time and you prefer to just read it all, that's what that PDF handout's for. I will say the training video maybe goes into a bit more detail at a different pace. You can skip between modules, etc. And I hope that you check them out. But I will open it up for questions, and our contact information is listed here. I'll leave this up for maybe a couple minutes in case anyone needs to jot it down. And I've seen Avery has been busy in the chat responding to some questions, but what else do you guys have for us?
And Casey, do you mind if I just jump in first? Okay, so there's a couple questions that I could not answer about the partnerships that I wanted to bring up, but also for the sake of the recording, I will go ahead and read some of the questions that were in the chat. We received several questions about how to write a proposal with unknown funding for phase 2, and then if the program proposal is supposed to include changes to pathways for future biennia. So I will say that you may list any pathways you're planning to implement this biennium 25-27 as part of your grant program proposal. And then I did also want to note that there is not going to be a chance to change your program proposal as part of phase 2. So really try to capture your full proposal here. And then I know that could be kind of challenging without knowing the funding, and sort of like Casey mentioned is we're kind of going through this with you all, and there will be budget adjustment opportunities once awards have been made, so that could maybe help account for some of those uncertainties. And then the questions for you, Casey, were about the partnerships. So let me find those. One person asks if they're supposed to list current state partnerships, and then do partners include policymakers that have regular oversight of the program and informed decisions?
Okay, I'm seeing those in the chat. Thank you, Avery, for pointing those out. So for the current state partnerships question, if that's referring to like within the state of Oregon, yes. If you have any more details you want to provide, feel free to come off mute or include them in the chat. And then do the partners include policymakers that have regular oversight of the program and informed decisions? I think there is, I'm trying to scroll back through to see what exactly, if there is that other, I think there might be a, hey, if there's other folks, please specify if you want to, sure. So yes, there is, as part of that, hey, optional organizations that you've partnered with to develop, et cetera. Go ahead and click that other, specify away. That entire like additional partners question, these are not required. And so these are just optional folks that you're including. It would be great for us to know, and I guess collectively understand how applicants and grantees are collaborating with their programs. That helps with our technical assistance and maybe advocacy in the future. But I wouldn't say that it's a required component. You have to get all of that down. But if you want to provide the information, please do. And then thanks for that clarification. So she meant current partners in our program versus an expansion in partnership. So I would say that, this would be a great space to include, like, in this biennium, we are partnering or plan partnership with these entities. Avery, was there any other questions you wanted to call out before we move through some of the other chat ones?
Nope, I think we got them. So yeah, maybe if just people have questions, they can say them now.
I see one from Christina Scholes around historical data. Great question for Will's team. And I know that I think Will dropped his email in the chat very early on. It's the very first comment, if you scroll back up to the top. But Christina, I recommend that you schedule that one-on-one TA meeting with Will and his team if you haven't already. And that is the exact goal of that meeting, is to walk you through and understand the historical data, how it may be different from the data that you are collecting on your own, et cetera, et cetera. All right, I know that we're past 11 now, but are there any other questions I can answer for you all at this moment? If not, of course, to reach me or Avery via email. Avery's a great contact if you were having any issues with SM Apply. If it's something a little bit more programmatic, feel free to direct your questions to me. And fantastic, I'm glad to hear you got your meeting with Will scheduled, Christina. So yes, he will take the time to answer those at that meeting. Okay, well, thank you so much for tuning in today. It was great to walk through this with you. I hope it was helpful, and I wish you all a wonderful weekend.